everybody, TMG here. They say that a good game isn't just fun, but it impacts you personally, forever ingraining itself in your memories and in your heart. As much as some would want you to think otherwise, video games are really a form of art. Just like a good movie or a good book, video games can inspire us. So for me, one of those games is Donkey Kong Country 3. Now, I've reviewed Donkey Kong Country 3 before, along with its predecessors, Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2. I will leave a link to that video in the description. This video is less a review and more an analysis of Donkey Kong Country 3, breaking down what makes this game so great. The Donkey Kong Country series as a whole is a series that not only transcends time, but video games itself. Each of these games has left an impact on me. Their unique worlds, gameplay, and atmosphere can be found nowhere else in gaming. But today I want to focus on what I consider to not only be one of the most unique Donkey Kong Country games, but an outright perfect 2D platformer. Now, I don't go around saying a game is perfect very often. That is a title I give to the select few greatest games of all time. So when I say Donkey Kong Country 3 is a perfect game, I mean it. Now by perfect, I don't mean that there aren't any bugs in the code or that there aren't any human errors in the game. What I mean is that by the standards of fun, there is nothing I would change about this game that can make it better. Now, when I ask people, specifically retro video game fans, what game introduced us to the modern 2D platformer, the most common answer I get is Super Mario World. Now this answer makes sense in a way. Super Mario World was one of the first big 2D platformers to introduce collectibles in the form of Dragon Coins. It was the first mainline Mario game that you could 100%. Super Mario World also allowed the player to regularly save at save points, something the NES titles didn't let you do. But Super Mario World wasn't the introduction of the modern 2D platformer. Super Mario World still carries many arcade tropes. For example, save points are limited, and if you get a game over, you are booted back to the last point at which you saved. Although collectible items were introduced, they weren't even close to really being fleshed out yet. Now, this isn't a criticism of Super Mario World. I actually enjoy games that carry these more arcade-like tropes. In fact, Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2 carry these same tropes, and they're some of my favorite games of all time. But Donkey Kong Country 3 is a little different. Collectibles like DK Hero Coins, Brothers Bears Coins, Bonus Coins, and Banana Birds are, I'm gonna say it, perfectly implemented. I don't think I've ever seen any other game implement collectibles so perfectly. This makes Donkey Kong Country 3 one of the most satisfying games to 100%. Save points are not limited. You can save whenever you want. This allows the level designers to implement more creative and challenging levels without them having to worry about the player losing progress when a game over comes along. So what's the point I'm trying to make here? Well, Donkey Kong Country 3 mastered and introduced the art of the modern 2D platformer. I find this game incredibly revolutionary for this achievement alone. 2D platformers from this point on were never the same. Now, the modern 2D platformer style isn't necessarily better than the more retro-style 2D platformers. In my mind, they're equals. I mean, I am a retro gamer after all. I've seen fantastic games made in both styles. But I do think this illustrates an interesting point and shows why Donkey Kong Country 3 is so unique, especially in the context of the original trilogy. Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2 were retro-style 2D platformers, taking a lot of inspiration from Super Mario World. But Donkey Kong Country 3 was made in a unique time. DKC3 was released 2 months after the Nintendo 64 came out. The focus of video games had changed since a year earlier when Donkey Kong Country 2 released. Gamers had different expectations. Video games were no longer just about overcoming a difficult challenge. They were now a bit more exploration-based, a bit more puzzle-oriented. If Donkey Kong Country 3 was going to be a success like its predecessors, they couldn't just make Donkey Kong Country 2 again. The DKC team had to think outside of the barrel on this one. Oh, okay, I'm sorry for the bad joke. Let's just continue. When playing Donkey Kong Country 3, you can tell how eager the team was to push the series forward, especially compared to its predecessors. Donkey Kong Country 1 was a revolutionary title, introducing the world to pre-rendered 3D graphics in video games. Donkey Kong Country 2 was evolutionary, focusing more on increasing the difficulty in the collectibles. It did evolve the collectibles a little. Donkey Kong Country 2 came out only a year after Donkey Kong Country 1, and was meant to challenge the players who'd mastered the first game. Remember, the gaming world's expectations hadn't changed much since the first game, and DKC 2 was exactly what Donkey Kong fans needed and wanted at that time. Now, it's expected that sequels, especially in established series like Donkey Kong Country, are more evolutionary than revolutionary. It's not usually normal for a sequel to be a revolutionary title, usually because gaming companies don't want to change what already works. But Donkey Kong Country 3 is an exception. Now, the way Donkey Kong Country 3 changes 2D platformers seems somewhat subtle, but it is significant, and that is why I consider it a revolutionary title. Now, Donkey Kong Country 3 keeps everything great about the first two games, such as tight controls, unique buddy mechanics, immersive world building, expert level design, and some of the greatest video game music of all time. But what does Donkey Kong Country 3 change? Well, the first thing you'll notice when you boot up the game is how incredibly detailed the world map is. The Northern Hemisphere really feels alive in this game. The way the waves move back and forth, and the way the Kongs move around the space gives the world map an incredibly polished feel. This is especially apparent when comparing it to the first two games' world maps, which are composed of static images with minimal animation. Remember, Donkey Kong Country 3 was trying to compete with all the new Nintendo 64 games coming out at the time, while using weaker hardware. The Donkey Kong Country team pulled out every fancy trick in this game, with incredible attention to detail. And I can say with no doubt in my mind that Donkey Kong Country 3 is the most graphically impressive SNES game ever. I mean, just look at how the colors pop off the screen, and do I even need to mention the waterfalls? There's also incredible detail in the sound design. You can hear your character swimming, riding boats, and riding ski lifts on the world map. Again, with the waterfalls, you can hear the roar of the waterfalls in the background and foreground. I've heard people criticizing the first game for sometimes having sound effects that don't fit, and while I don't agree with this criticism, I've never heard this criticism targeted toward the third game, and I think this game's incredible attention to detail is why. Now let's dive a little deeper into the gameplay. Each Donkey Kong Country game has a different Kong partnership, which changes how each game plays. Donkey Kong Country 1 had Donkey and Diddy, Donkey Kong Country 2 had Diddy and Dixie, and Donkey Kong Country 3 has Dixie and Kiddy. I find the partnership of Dixie Kong and Kiddy Kong to be one of the most satisfying duos to play as in any video game. When listening to others talk about Donkey Kong Country 2, I often hear people saying that Dixie Kong overshadows Diddy Kong with her helicopter hair ability. Yes, Diddy Kong does run a bit faster, but most people I've talked to have claimed some form of that statement. And when I listen to people talk about their first playthrough with Donkey Kong Country 3, I hear something very similar, that they feel Dixie Kong overshadowed Kiddy Kong with her helicopter hair ability. But something remarkable happens during someone's second playthrough of Donkey Kong Country 3. They understand the untapped power of Kiddy Kong as they become better at the game. Kiddy Kong is quite possibly the best controlling Kong in the DKC series. The way he jumps and always lands where you want him to is always so satisfying. His faster cartwheel makes him ideal for plowing through enemies. The way he holds barrels in front of him allows him to use barrels as shields, similar to Diddy Kong, yet he still possesses great strength like Donkey Kong and can defeat large enemies. And if you really want to add sprinkles on top, he can skip on water and break through floorboards. The more I play Donkey Kong Country 3, the more I love Kiddy Kong. His incredibly precise controls perfectly balance out Dixie Kong's hair helicopter, as Dixie Kong isn't quite as precise as Kiddy Kong and is not as good at taking out enemies from the ground. Now I think you can already tell that Donkey Kong Country 3 is quite the remarkable game, almost effortlessly improving on its predecessors. but we haven't even gotten to what makes this game revolutionary yet. Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2 had secrets and collectibles, but they were hidden in a more arcade-like fashion, especially the DK Hero coins in Donkey Kong Country 2. Some of those are incredibly cryptic, and I'm surprised I was able to 102% that game so many years ago. But Donkey Kong Country 3 is a different story. Collectibles are not as hard to find. In fact, some of them are in plain sight. The challenge now is figuring out how to get to them. The best example of this is the coin enemy in each level. The DK Hero coin is protected by a coin enemy in each stage. These enemies often hide in plain sight. The challenge is figuring out how to defeat them so you can collect the shiny collectible they carry. This is a fun challenge that rewards the player for thinking outside of the barrel. Oh shoot, I said it again, I'm sorry. Bonus rooms are still fairly similar to how they were in Donkey Kong Country 2, but now with a lot more variety. I believe this was a smart move. Keeping a balance between the puzzle-like nature of the coin enemies and the somewhat more arcade-like feel of the bonus rooms in the previous games allows Donkey Kong Country 3 to stay connected to its roots while still looking towards the future. This is something I applaud the Donkey Kong Country team for. DKC3 isn't trying to recreate Mario 64 in the SNES. DKC3 isn't a collectathon game. Donkey Kong Country 3 is a proper sequel to DKC2. It is not trying to change the core of Donkey Kong Country. Rather, DKC3 is trying to polish and modernize what came before. Donkey Kong Country 3 is still a challenging platformer at its core, like its predecessors, but it isn't afraid to change things if it means that the game will be better. The designers knew they had something special with the previous games, and they weren't trying to replace it. This is why I feel Donkey Kong Country 3 is a truly revolutionary game. Being a game stuck between two console generations, it had the opportunity to evaluate what came before and evaluate what was coming, and create the best combination of these two different perspectives. Donkey Kong Country 3 still keeps the classic challenge we retro video game fans love, while also being just forgiving enough for new players to get in on the fun. If you want to play Donkey Kong Country 3 like its predecessors and blast through the game, you can. But if you want to play it more like a modern 2D platformer, scouring every corner for secrets, puzzles, and collectibles, you can do that too. Donkey Kong Country 3 gave us the modern 2D platformer. The new Super Mario Bros. Games and Super Mario Bros. Wonder owe a lot to Donkey Kong Country 3. The game showed us how to perfectly implement collectibles to be fun and rewarding, while also keeping the more arcade-like roots of the series alive for those who love a good challenge. Even the Retro Studios Donkey Kong Country games use the same formula, despite referencing DKC 1 and 2 more often than DKC 3. Let's just say there is a reason why Donkey Kong Country 3 is the only DKC game I've 100%ed over 5 times, which is 103% in the game. What Rare did here is truly incredible. DKC 3 keeps everything I love about the previous games, while still looking forward to the future of the DKC series. Now we just talked about how DKC 3's collectibles are brilliantly implemented, but that's only half of the story, because we need to talk about Krematoa. Now Donkey Kong Country 2 had a lost world, which was cool, but I think Donkey Kong Country 3 really nailed it with Krematoa. Krematoa is definitely one of the best endgame campaigns in any Donkey Kong Country game. By using those nice bonus coins you collected, you can unlock secret levels in Krematoa. These levels are incredibly difficult, but as the reward for beating all of them, you get to face off against Baron K.Rool in the final secret boss fight and see the secret ending, which I won't talk about the secret ending, but I love the secret ending. Donkey Kong Country 3 is one of the most rewarding games to 100% I have ever played. Now we move on to what I think makes Donkey Kong Country 3 a truly perfect game. Its level gimmicks. Now before any of you go in the comments and type, "I don't like games that are gimmicky," I need you to ask yourself if you like Donkey Kong Country games. Because if you do, you like gimmicky games. Gimmicks have been part of the series from the beginning. Whether it's barrel levels, minecart levels, levels where the lights turn on and off, levels with magic floating platforms, levels with a switch that stops Kremlings from moving. It's a gimmick. Don't try to tell me otherwise. It's what helps set DKC apart from other 2D platformers. Anyways, Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2 commonly reuse level gimmicks in order to help fill out each level. Donkey Kong Country 3, on the other hand, brings a new gimmick with every single level. This keeps DKC 3 feeling extremely fresh all the way through. There's no other game quite like it. You can tell that the DKC team knew this would be their last DKC game on the SNES, and they didn't hold out on us. They put every idea they had into this game, and I love it. I wish we still got 2D platformers with so much variety. The closest thing we have to it is Donkey Kong Country Returns and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. But even those games reuse a few gimmicks. Donkey Kong Country 3 doesn't even reuse one gimmick. Each level brilliantly introduces a gimmick, uses it to its full capacity in that level, and then moves on. If you don't know what I'm talking about, get a Super Nintendo right now and play Donkey Kong Country 3. I'm not asking, it's an order, come on, I'm waiting. Okay, you got it? Okay, we can move on. Something I love about all the Donkey Kong Country games is the unique vibe and emotions they give off. Donkey Kong Country 3's focus is one of mystery. Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong have disappeared, and we are hoping we will find them by exploring the vast northern hemisphere. This theme of mystery is reflected in the setting and especially the music. I love how unique the music is in this game. It really makes it feel like I'm discovering a new land every time I go through the northern hemisphere. And the sense of mystery increases as you adventure through the game, along with the darker tone. Music has always been a highlight of the Donkey Kong Country series, and Donkey Kong Country 3 is no exception. Phew! That was probably one of the longest videos I ever made, and that was also the longest script I ever wrote. I've been playing the Donkey Kong Country games for years now, and genuinely love these games. I hope that you felt that today as you watched this video. Regardless of your opinions on the Donkey Kong Country games, I hope that you can see just how important Donkey Kong Country 3 is. It's not only a great game, but it was the first 2D platformer to truly pave the way for the modern style of 2D platformers that so many play today. TMG out. Goodbye.